Hello and welcome to another episode of CROWSFOOT, brought to you today by Northwest College of Construction. I have a special guest today, James Arnold from JRA Green Building here in Portland, Oregon. And James, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and happy Earth Day.
Thanks, Zane. James Ray Arnold, JRA Green Building. I am one of the few committed green builders here in the area. Been working at it for a while. Grew up in the trades, and as time went by, I thought that perhaps there might be some other ways of going about things. As I dug into it, I realized, to quote my father, that there was an opportunity for a return to quality, and that's the fundamental motivation. Just having a desire to maybe try to be part of an avant-garde movement in the building industry. Builders by nature always want to find the best way to do things and improve not only the pace that they can get stuff done, productivity, but also take a lot of pride in the quality. And that's my interpretation. My green building effort is not an evangelistic endeavor. It's about trying to get back to building stuff right. And everyone's got a different way of looking at that, even in the green building community. So I've been working on it for quite a while. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not saying we do it perfect, but one thing I will say is we got to always question how we're going about stuff and look ahead to either improve what we're doing or go back to some of the tried and true methods.
Nice. What are some of the things, what comes to mind when you think about Earth Day, right? Earth Day is something celebrating the earth and the fact that it is our planet. It sustains life for us, or at least so far it has. What are some of the things that come to mind when you think about a celebration of the earth?
Yeah, I'm happy that the day exists, as I'm happy about a lot of holidays. It's not strictly political or spiritual, though. I think it's subjective. Everyone has their own experience or interaction. Some people have no interaction with the earth, as it seems, but it's the place we live, and like it or not, it is the place that sustains us. As humans, we're pretty far downstream, at least in the more urbanized or industrialized society, from the earth's benefits. I think a lot of people that spend time outdoors, have a direct connection there. But in terms of like how it sustains life, I think there's a big disconnection there. So for me, Earth Day is laced with some irony in that I think these celebrations are here to remind people to have respect and be good stewards. But then perhaps after that celebration, they may go back to the daily. And I'm not here to judge anybody for how they live, right? There's the way I do things. I want to live and let live. That's where I come from. But if you're going to ask me, about what it means, I think from sitting here in front of you as a green builder, what it means to me is that there are some pretty straightforward, pretty well understood ways to go about building stuff that can be part of either the solution or as I like to say, doing less worse. Because let's face it, if you're building stuff, you're using resources. So if you want to figure out how to start with less worse and then maybe move on to the idealistic points of regenerative design and whatnot, we're a long ways from that. You don't have to look far to learn and do what it takes. And if you're a good builder, you can adapt your craft rather quickly and get 3/4 of the way there, in my opinion, in terms of a better built environment. That's part of like a preservation or a conservation effort that would be along the lines of celebrating Earth Day every day.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's as most celebrations are, it's like this one day we give to celebrate this event, that event, this holiday, that holiday. And then it's a reminder, like you said. I mean, that's how I take it. So I think that was well put. And you know, but you're right. It's what do we do with that the rest of the year, right? And you know, actualizing and executing discipline in these ways. As builders, we know that whenever we go onto a construction site, we're polluting the environment in one way or the other. Whether that is a real hardcore pollution from anything as simple as wood particles in the air impacting walkers by on a sidewalk. That's one way to look at it. Another way is nasty paint runoff into the gray water system. All of these things, in some way, shape, or form, as builders, we contribute to making a mess is a part of our job so much of the time, right? So being a good steward means to take the preventative measures ahead of time in your planning, right? And putting together a good phase by phase plan to minimize these impacts on our communities and the environment, the earth itself. So I mean, that's some of what it means to me. And I like that you said, give me that phrase again that you said, doing less harm. What did you say?
Oh yeah. It's an interesting term that comes up even in the most idealistic circles. So if you were to go to, like, say, the Living Future conference, which is put on by the International Living Future Institute, which is probably the most idealistic group in the world in terms of like how they're trying to influence the built environment, which is like in architecture speak, like the built environment, like everything that we build all around us, including urban planning. A lot of the presentations, a lot of the talks from recognized personalities and accomplished authors and communicators in that environment, they refer to this kind of spectrum that we're on right now, and that we're in this, if the Industrial Revolution was like more like a runaway train and we were like really like messing it up, we're only like a little bit further down the graph, or the if we were to graph like how bad we're doing, we're only like further down the graph into like the less worse category.
We still
got a long ways to go to get to the like sustainable, which would be like the 0 point, and then the regenerative would be like that we're actually beginning to regenerate some of the stuff that we've torn up. And there's in actively doing that is kind of a funny word, like actively regenerating, because you could argue again, like you were saying, be a little more conservative, build smaller, build less, consume less. Kind of a funny thing, if you look around you, the earth's pretty damn good at regenerating itself without even, we don't need to get too involved in that,
Right. As long as we're not,
maybe I'm oversimplifying, but you get my gist, right?
Yeah. Of course, if we're not impeding the Mother Nature's normal ability to regenerate, then I feel like we've really accomplished something, right? Whereas, especially in urban environments, we're making a lot of impact by building new, which seems to fly right in the face of being sustainable, right? But of course, there's part of that regenerative process is people being born on the planet, just like other species. And, I would assume just like other primates, we tend to build structures for ourselves, right? So that's all part of this process, I think. And always coming back full circle that we live here. And so if you're not going to trash your house, you probably don't want to trash the earth either, right? So yeah.
It's tough because it's not intuitive, and it's not necessarily common knowledge what goes into the life cycle of, say, any given material or product, right? So there's a term called life cycle analysis, LFA. And so just pick anything like the Stabilas that you have hanging on the wall there. Let's look at the aluminum, look at the plastic, look at the glass, think about what it takes to get that in sitting, behind the counter at Par Lumber or the box stores or whatnot. The aluminum's got to be extracted, right? So you got some mining. So if you know a little bit about mining, it ain't church, you know. It's a lot of work. There's a lot involved there. It's not the most glamorous situation, and it doesn't necessarily leave the earth from which it was mined in all that great a shape. Now, some mining operations got it together, and they do work to like create, you know, to regenerate or put things back together when they're done. Plastics, you know, without getting too much into plastics, there are thousands of different types of plastics with all sorts of things that we probably aren't even aware of that we're going to find out later in terms of persistent carcinogens. And we don't need to get too paranoid about this stuff, but what I'm saying is like, I think that we need to be aware of what it takes to get stuff to the job site or to the tools in your hands. And if you start thinking about that, you might be inclined to do with just a little bit less, or try to design and build stuff that's simpler, you know what I mean, that uses materials that are readily available or readily reconverted back to the earth to be used again. The old school stuff, right? Stone, wood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Been building with that stuff forever.
Right. Or just stick with glass. I mean, in my opinion, the movement to everyone's using stainless steel for water containers. I prefer that over all of the you know, just the leaching that's happening out of all the water bottles just from drinking out of them. Leave them in your car, then you've got all these paraffins and whatnot being leached into your water. Just on that note alone, I don't want to drink out of bottled water anymore, honestly. But we're so convenienced, right? I mean, that's a big deal. So yeah, not to get too far out there, but yeah, and I think it brings us back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, the 3 R's, right? It was always reduce, reuse, recycle. This came about like that mantra really of the 80s that I really remember. I'm sure you do too. But I think it harkens.
I used to have the T-shirt.
Yeah, and it harkens back to oh yeah, you worked at CalPERG, right? Or
yeah, I had that shirt from like
and
that was 93, I think, you know.
Yeah. And but that stuff harkens back to the 50s, just after World War II, when they were making nationwide movements to conserve our resources, and there might have been different political reasons for that then, but you know, I wonder how we're doing on that and how we did, because clearly no one really reduced much, and reusing is kind of chic in some ways, but you don't see that much either. But and then here we go back to plastics again. Everything's being recycled, just putting more chlorofluorocarbons back up.
Or not. It's like being driven around on a barge in the ocean, or just going into the ocean.
Right.
So you know? I always thought recycling was like some serious BS. And I never really knew enough about it, but you know, there's a lot of energy and water that goes into the a recycling process. So it's tough, right? Because you can't look at any kind of like environmental agenda or environmental impact through a single lens, right? It's always several lenses, you know, overlapping. So, you know, if you need water and energy, and then there's a waste component, you know, there's so many different things that interact to do an analysis on what the environmental impact of any said product or material is, right? So I'm with you. Like, let's just skip recycle and go back to reduce and reuse. I look at the term reduce as conserve. Yeah. And I think the whole reason I got into this industry was inspired by conservation. Little background, I'm a college dropout. I wanted to study renewable energy, but I can't sit still long enough to get a college degree. So, you know, I might have learned a lot.
I might have helped you out on that.
Yeah, Zane kind of helped that a little bit. A little great ocean action.
Yeah.
Took a decade or so out of that pathway, but I learned a lot, and that's part of who I am, and I would never change it. I think we're talking about playing music, guys. Everyone should play music. If you're gonna build, you should play music too. I think there's some evangelism for you. but really what's funny is that I've come full circle, and the reason I bring this up, Zane, is because in the light of reduce or conservation, I've been reading a lot lately, in supposed, reputable, magazines about things. And, like The Economist, for example, and I can't remember who owns The Economist, but it's probably someone we don't like. And anyways, big article about, analyzing renewables and the path to the various combination of renewable energy compared to fossil fuels and all that. Great article, right? Lots of good stuff in there. That's probably mostly true. Nowhere a mention of conservation, right? It's only about how do we supply for the current demand of energy. No discussion about, well, why don't we just use less energy? There are a million techniques for that. Why don't we just reduce the demand, and then the supply will fall right in there? It's mind-boggling to me that we're not embracing the concept of what I call passive technologies. And passive technologies are high-performance building envelopes that make for energy-efficient homes, right? And then also behavior things, as well, like how you use your home, and then simply design. Like when you design these boxes with no overhangs, and you start complaining that it's getting hot in the summer, well, hello, like, what do you think overhangs were for in the first place? You know what I mean? So yep. it's just we're just crazy as humans. We're crazy.
Yeah, we run off in our tangents for sure. And you touched on The Economist for a moment, which I think has great information in there very often. But yeah, you got to watch your where you get your information so often. And the world of economics too has been kind of I would say kind of pushed into an area where the misconception is that economics is all about return of investment. That doesn't do the science of economics any kind of justice at all. And quite honestly, when we're talking about Earth Day, talking about green building, talking about conservation, we need to be talking about opportunity cost and where's the real value and what is the cost. And we always equate these things to money, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's the wrong. I feel like that's a misunderstanding, I should say, maybe not wrong approach, mm-hmm. but a misunderstanding has occurred there, because I think the two. Would you say
that it's exclusive? That meaning like you're only telling part of the story if you're talking about costs in terms of only money? Is that what you're?
Well, I think on a base level, a lot of people misunderstand economics to only have to do with money and return of investment on investment.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. Not and not recognizing that not to get into an economics conversation, but it's basically a house law about how to organize and maintain in a balanced way one's own house, right? Mm-hmm. If you read Wealth of Nations and the Adam Smith stuff, mm-hmm. But that can be overlaid into how do we deal with our natural resources, and how do we restore. I think there's a pathway through economics to balance these resources out and the use of those resources in a balanced manner. So I think there's misconception there. I guess that what I'm getting at is that economy and taking care, being a good steward of the earth, they're not different topics. To me, they coexist. And if you get one right, you're closer to getting the other right as well. And you really see that in the construction field, because you're dealing with these things constantly. And anyway, just I'm kind of going out in the weeds there. I like where you're going with that.
I'm glad you brought the concept of economics into it, honestly, because let's face it, that's the biggest question that you get. And everyone that I deal with, every client first meeting, or every architect that I talk to, and even other builders, the first question or the first assumption is like, well, you know, I just don't want to pay more. I'm fine with it as long as I don't have to pay more. And like, that's that kind of entitled, selfish start. Or like a little more balanced, you know, person is going to be like, well, doesn't that cost more? If so, I'd like to know like what I'm purchasing, what the value of it is. Well, here's the funny thing. Like I always say, well, if you're only measuring costs in dollars, then you may be able to make the argument that it costs more, at least up front. If you're going to measure costs in terms of human health, the health of generations to come, quality of life, well-being, let's throw in social equity, because that's part of like the life cycle analysis of various products that we use that come from all over the world, right? If you factor that in, then I say, well, green building costs much less. It's much less, right? So that, and I believe that, but you have to look at it with that bigger lens. Going back to money, do you have to spend a little bit more up front? Yeah. Can you design it so that it can come down? Maybe you make things a little bit smaller. You reduce a few features here and there so you can use the same budget and still get a quality, wonderful place that you're going to really enjoy being in and being around. Yeah, I think so. And I think it's important to realize too that green building, let's just say green buildings, like for the sake of today or the sake of Earth Day, green building is embracing the concept of, or the basic concept of Earth Day, right?
Yeah.
The bar, okay, going back to what I said earlier about the return to quality, the bar only goes so low. So you're not paying more for green building, you're paying more for a quality custom product. If we're talking about custom building, custom homes. Now, when you get into production, there's already been a ton of work in that department. Walsh has spent tens of thousands of dollars doing research on affordable housing and multi-level commercial structures with various energy efficient methods that have come out, you know, if planned properly, can actually come in under budget compared to blow and go production style. So the thing is like, if there's one takeaway, if you know nothing about any of this and you want to like tip your hat or toast, have a drink to Earth Day, like pick something that you're passionate about, whether it's energy efficiency, material toxicity or life cycle, sustainable forestry. We haven't really touched on that, but that's one of my favorites. And what I'm really passionate about. Go dig around. Like there's a lot of resources out there, and form your own opinions and develop your own interests about this, and then start small, grab a little bit. Before you know it, like you'll be one of the, you know, 0.01% builders out there that know a few things about doing shit right, or in the French.
Was that French?
Yeah. Wait, is Scheisse French or is that German?
Edit. Oh man. Okay, so that was a good round. And I don't want to get too far off topic, so I want to come back around and ask you about sustainable forestry. I know it's a passion of yours. Let her rip. What do you give us drop some knowledge on sustainable forestry? I know it's something that you study.
Well, it's, you know, it's I'm sure most people in the building industry, you know, view forest products, you know, the wood that we use as a it's something that regenerates, right? We're really fortunate. We have thousands and thousands of acres of wood to use from, and there are varying opinions on how to manage that. Just recently, the architects or the people that wrote basically the forest scientists that wrote the Oregon Forestry Plan, you know, about 40-50 years ago, published a book basically going back on their original findings on how to manage forests. So what has happened is, you know, it takes decades, right, for you to gather that information. So the forestry methods that were considered best practices have now come under heavy criticism by the original architects of those things. My point in bringing that up is that what we want is we actually want forest products, not plantation products, not orchards of forests. And some people really believe in plantation forestry as like perhaps the exclusive way to provide wood product. But if you, I'm not going to go into it too much, but if you dig in a little bit and do your research, you'll find a lot of information that supports that well-managed forest. And a well-managed forest includes, you know, a forest that allows for its original biodiversity to flourish, protects its waterways, therefore protecting the fisheries. Okay, that's a whole, no pun intended, that's a whole downstream situation that affects, you know, even the oceans, right? And then also the quality of the forest floor. What has been neglected is actually soil management and soil health, right? So the soils kind of functions as its own living organism per se. And it's responsible for processing a lot of carbon, and it's also filters a lot of our rainwater. So when you look at the Forest Stewardship Council, which is FSC for short, the Forest Stewardship Council, they certify forests, and then there's a chain of custody where they certify the wood products that come through the forest, through the mills, through the suppliers, and then to us. As far as I know, I'm one of a couple of builders on the continent that is actually a certified, FSC certified contracting outfit. And we built the second home in the world that we claimed as an FSC product. So where some people might claim a cabinet or a piece of furniture, we're claiming entire projects. And the reason this is important to me is because I feel like we can still support the demand for wood products, but we can do it in a way where the wood product is a forest product and not a plantation product. And again, the reason this is important is because the forests are integral to carbon management. They're also integral to like the plants and animals that live in them, and the plants and animals that live in the waterways, right? So I know like we're getting kind of out there on the environmentalism, but I don't know that anybody's gonna, you know, want to argue with me about like the quality of our forests. Like I don't think anybody wants to see that stuff be degraded or neglected, especially if there's some tried and true methods to work that out. So check out the Forest Stewardship Council. I know it's a lot that I kind of went through quickly. Check out their website, FSC for short, and then also like challenge their assumptions too. Look at SFI, which is the industry produced, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. This is the logging industry and the lumber industry produced their own standard to try to counteract the FSC. Look at both standards. Find out for yourself whether one's trying to take a shortcut on forest management or not. And then look at forest management practices in other parts of the world where you source your material. Learn about how that's going down. Like, is there an FSC forest in Vietnam that's getting like clear-cut e-pay from a neighboring country that has no forest management practice? Like, it's a dicey industry, even on our own continent. But as soon as you start going to like the tropical and the developing nations, it gets even worse. So I'll leave it at that.
No, I love it. So in regard to Earth Day, this is what it's all about, is carrying on this celebration every day, right? So we wouldn't need an FSC or an SFI or if we were simply being good stewards of our own immediate surroundings every day. So, you know, again, it's, you know, let Earth Day follow you all 365 days.
Don't get me wrong, Zane. Like if I would have trekked all the way across our country and stumbled upon like some ancient forest of redwoods, I would have been like, oh man, getting me to saw. Look at all this wood, you know. I would have just started cutting it all down and thinking that there was never going to be an end to it. But back then, no one ever figured that the population was going to be, what are we pushing, like 400 million or something like that? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's an unintended, you know, I mean, it's built into our nature to increase efficiencies, right? And then when we increase efficiencies, we increase the rate of extraction. And then before we even know what's happened, we've gone too far and we gotta hit the brakes. And then we like create these systems, right? Like the FSC, which is basically a system of common sense. right? But now it's a certification and organization to kind of counteract, the gluttony. So
No,
anyway.
I agree. And when it comes to, in my humble opinion, efficiency is actually common sense. So if you're actually being efficient, um, you're not wasting and you're not consuming too much. That's not efficient, right? So it kind of
Mm, mm.
chasing our tail a
I
bit.
like your version of it better than mine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, just in a pragmatic, conservative, and conservationalist kind of mindset. So okay, so that's good stuff. That brings me to my little lightning round. I'm going to just throw a spattering of nowadays present day topics, and just to get your lightning reflex on what you think about this stuff. Just you can give us image, color, whatever comes to mind. Tell us what you think. Shooting from the hip here.
Okay.
So touched on one thing. You mentioned soil as being so important to forestry. And to me, a lot of I won't say a lot, but I've been researching radio frequencies and how these things impact our soils and our water and our air, of course. And clearly, there's studies that show radio frequency is a biohazard. In some cases, extreme cases, it can cause landslides and these sorts of things. And this goes into that being a good steward. The other one is the 3 R's. How are we doing? Reduce, reuse, recycle. And then finally, have you heard of Scope X? A very interesting subject and experiment coming from a group out of Harvard who wants to put particulates into the sky to reflect the sun away. Pretty interesting stuff. It was just heavily opposed by the different groups in Sweden and mostly by the hopefully I get this right, the Sami indigenous people who are actually reindeer herders, were in huge opposition to this experiment taking place in Sweden. So those three: radio frequency pollution, the 3 R's, and SpaceX. Ready, set, go. What do you think about?
Okay, radio frequency pollution. Man. All right, builders, make sure that either you have or your electricians have a Gauss meter, in your bags. And when you're designing and building stuff, don't put your panel, don't put any kind of bundles of wiring or anything near where you're sleeping at night, right? Keep all that stuff far away. You shouldn't be, especially the kids, especially pregnant moms, all that. If you can take the time to wire things properly, you can dramatically reduce EMF exposure, right? And this isn't even, now we're not even getting into Wi-Fi and cell phones, right? This is just this is before all of this, right? I've been increasingly concerned, about the phones and how that's evolving and how the amplitudes, the power is going up for distribution, more and more towers, whatnot. I don't know if most people don't read the manual. I read part of the manual on my phone. It says to keep it 4 feet away from your body at all times. So that's pretty interesting because I've used a Gauss meter on a Gauss meter, just so you guys know, measures electromagnetic fields, and named after the scientist Gauss. And anyways, I've used it to measure EMFs coming off of induction stoves, because I was trying to figure out whether that was right for us when my wife was pregnant. Within about a foot, it's fine. So what does that tell you about like what a phone's doing if you're supposed to keep that thing 4 feet away? I mean, I remember in the early days of phones, whenever I'd move my phone closer to my ear would just like cringe and hurt just at the thought of coming there. And then now I use, speakerphone and most of the time now going, so I don't know that I have a solution. All I'm saying is like, don't believe the hype. If anybody's telling you that EMFs, radio waves, microwaves, if anybody's telling you that any of this technology, which is still arguably in its infancy, is not a problem, then they're blowing smoke up your what. So again, get out there, learn for yourself, right? Be an objective reader, question even the things that support your ideas, compare those to to maybe the ideas that neglect any kind of skepticism or neglect or don't address any of the concerns, the health concerns, and then come up with a strategy the best you can to live in this world with all this stuff flying around, you know, and be as safe as you can. Or if you're sensitive to it, move out to the woods.
Yeah.
Let's go to the other.
The 3
next
R's we kind of touched on the 3 R's.
We
earlier,
touched on that one,
so.
yeah. So yeah, the recap on that. Let's replace recycle with another word. I don't know, Zane, what would be a good one to replace recycle with, or just get rid of it altogether? Read. Read, research.
There you go.
Reduce,
reuse, and read.
produce.
There we go. I like that.
Or if you're not into reading, like, trust me, like, I like reading, but I told you I can't sit still for that long. Get some audio. Go ahead and plug in those EMF headphones and listen. You know, I'm joking, but get an audio. You know, get some audio rolling in the truck on the way to work, or audiobook. That's a good way. Like, when I go for a run, I listen to audio when I'm not listening to, you know, the Mother Nature or whatever. I don't want to listen to the cars, you know. But reduce is the most important one. And you can say reduce and reuse could be, you can call reuse like salvage. There's a lot of interest in the salvage industry right now. So you could say reuse is salvaging, right? You know, some of the clothing industry and part of the construction industry has taken a great interest into reusing materials. There's a lot of plastic that gets used in clothing and in some building materials. I don't know how I feel about the plastic in the clothing on the skin thing. Maybe that's another interview day, Zane. But there is a place, like, really, in terms of reuse and recycle. Like, if we just stopped putting things into the recycle stream now, then we could probably start converting all that stuff into the reuse area. And then let's go to the reduce, which could be converted to the eliminate. So reduce is, like I was saying before, if we're doing less worse, we're reducing. If we actually get to something that's sustainable, we've actually are not consuming, meaning there's nothing to reduce, right? We've, like, eliminated consumption. Now, that's an unreasonable request, but there needs to be a cycle of consumption and then what we put back in, and that's what regeneration means. So if we're going to reduce, it's about having a fighting chance at restoring, you know, a natural cycle. So reduce your energy consumption, reduce things that consume a lot of energy, and then we can find ways to provide the energy that we need, because the demand will be much lower. So that's my spiel on that one. How about that? And then just quit buying random stuff.
No, I think it's great. And you know, it brings me to, like, the Farmer's Almanac, Mother Earth News, these sorts of things. You know, farmers got this stuff down a long time ago, right? You know, they had to.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Pretty interesting.
We're going back to the common sense thing, right?
Yeah, 101.
And then,
so yeah.
And then the that's so funny that it's called you know, we have SpaceX, but then you're calling the new one is what's it called again? Sorry.
GoPex.
Go. What's
Scope X,
right?
Yeah. This is the idea that they want to put balloons up into the stratosphere and, you know, expel reflective particulates to, you know, stop the sun rays coming down. What do you think of that?
I mean, who's our audience here? Like, how many of you guys seen The Matrix, right? Like, how did that work out? I'm not saying we're living in the Matrix, but sometimes I wonder if we're headed that direction, you know. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's like, I've been reading a lot of science fiction for a long time, and a lot of it's come true. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I going way back, you know, Chris Malcolm gave me my first Robert Heinlein book, you know, Stranger in a Strange Land. And, like, you start reading all that stuff and you're like, whoa, we're actually living in that world now. You know, I don't know if they created it by writing it or what, or they just had a future sense. But my point in bringing that up is we have to be really careful about using technology to solve problems that resulted from technology. I'm not saying it's not possible, but, like, we live in a techno technophilic society. Is that right? In the industrial world, it's technophilic. Can I say
Sounds
word
good.
love, infatuated? I'm on the iPhone right now. I mean, I love being able to take a photo of an issue on site, mark it up, send it to someone immediately, get some feedback. I mean, it's great. I mean, we got some tools that really help our craft. I question whether computers have helped us get things built faster or not, but some of the things that we can do, with our phones and pads and videos and stuff on site are pretty amazing. The fact that we're able to do this interview right now, this used to be live via satellite in the 80s, and that was like a big deal, right? You got someone on the other side of the planet that you're having an interview with. Well, now we can do this with somebody in Antarctica right now if we can just set up a Zoom link. So my point is, technology is not bad, right? And again, we shouldn't. It's not the technology. It's like how we use it and what we think can get done with it. Going back to reduce. If we can work on our conservation efforts, then why do we got to be so drunk on these active technologies and take huge risks? You know what I mean? Like by shooting stuff up into the sky, and we have no plan on how to reverse the effects if it turns out that it doesn't work as planned.
Yeah.
So my opinion on that, I'm super skeptical of it. It's gonna be a tough sell for me. I would probably have to go get a degree in physics before I'd even feel comfortable passing judgment on it. But I do a lot of things on intuition, and my intuition right now is I'm not happy with shooting a bunch of particles in the atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, the volcanoes might do that soon enough anyway, right?
That's right. Especially if I'm stomping my feet around so much lately.
Man, well, so I think we rounded it out pretty good, Happy Earth Day. I think we touched on different ways to activate and talked about, you brought a lot of great points up about being a good steward and different places to look and form your own, people can form their own opinion and hopefully go out there and get involved in what they're doing beyond just swinging the hammer, beyond just putting that cell phone next to your head. Let's start to be mindful of some of this stuff and make sure we're bringing some awareness with us, right?
I'm with you on that, Zane. I think it starts with basic respect and start small. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to figure it out, overnight. And remember, we're builders, we're innovators, right? We're the kind of people that can figure this stuff out and implement it rather quickly because we got the skill and the mindset.
Yeah,
and we get up and we do
tech is
stuff.
there now. and the tech is there now if we want to use it correctly, right? So
yeah,
right stuff. Yeah. All right. Well, James,
thanks for having me get. Sorry, you were gonna say.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But thank you. It's been a while since you and I were able to talk, and I'm glad we were able to jump right back into it. It's a privilege, to have this conversation with you. It's one that I don't get to have to this depth often, and it makes me feel good to have an opportunity to talk about it. So thank you, Zane. I'm grateful for that.
Oh, well, thank you. It was my pleasure, man. I'm glad you were able to take some time out of your super busy schedule and meet with me. We'll have to do it again sometime. And
let's do it.
I'm sure we could ramble on about a great many different subjects. So, but this
we should
one
pick
today,
Independence Day. We should pick Independence Day for the next one.
Yeah, that's good. I'm all about it. But in all seriousness, Happy Earth Day. That's what this one's all about. And hopefully you've got some good projects on the books right now and helping some people achieve their quality of life out there, right? That their vision, making their vision a reality. It's cool stuff that you do out there. I've been a part of some of those projects and I've seen a lot of your projects from afar. And anybody want to go see more from JRA Green Building? What is it? JRAgreenbuilding.com? Did I get that wrong?
It's JRAGBC.com.
JRAGBC.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
So,
hit us
some
up.
really, really great projects, high-end builds, high-minded builds. I mean that,
Yeah.
quite honestly. And you guys are really achieving on a lot of different levels. So hats off to you. Happy Earth Day. Keep up the good work, and let's do it again soon.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
You have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.